it'd be good if we could go live.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll just finish the slides, and if the speakers and hosts and everybody else in working in the background as well wants to join us after, then please do. We'll stay on the line and we will go into a breakout group. So over to you, Elizabeth. Let's do some intros, and I'll put the slides on the screen.
And Sonia's joined us, so can we make Sonia co-host?
Have we gone live now?
Yeah, we're live.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to one of our next sessions here on Wednesday. Today we'll be focusing on a leader's well-being.
Sonia's joined us, so can we make Sonia co-host?
Sonia is a co-host.
Are we live now, Paul?
Yes, we're live, and Sonia has been co-hosted.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
No problem.
Just 1 second. I'll just try and get my screen has gone.
So welcome everybody. This is our 10th Wellbeing webinar. Could you believe it? So please do say hello in the chat box. Please say who you are, where you are today. I am in the same place as I have been for the last 10 weeks, believe it or not. I'm here in Staffordshire, and the weather is probably the same as it has been as well. It's a little bit cloudy, and hopefully it'll get warmer throughout the evening. My job role, I'm part of the Horizons team. I'm Deputy Director of the Horizons team, and the Horizons team and colleagues are hosting today. One nice thing that's happened this week, I've had some nice time with my family this week, and very much looking forward to spending a nice weekend together as well. Tell you a little bit about me. My son's gone back to school this week. He might pop in and see us later today, but it's been nice to have him in school for a couple of hours where I can focus on work without that guilt feeling. So that's what's been happening in my life this week. So please do say hello in the chat box, and send it to all participants so we can say hello too. There's a couple of things that we'd like to say while we get going. We've got our wellbeing community, which is on Tribe. So if you haven't joined us already, please do log on to Tribe and share either the work that you're doing or comment on the work that is going on already. We've also got a mailing list. So if you're not already on the mailing list, please do head over to the Horizons website and log on. There's over, I think it's about 1,400 people have joined already. So please do join that so you can keep up to date with everything that's going on during and beyond these webinars as well. So please do have a little look on there. So as you join us, very welcome, a big welcome to the 10th Wellbeing session. And today we are focusing on leaders, not just leaders in formal roles, those that are in informal roles as well. So whether you are a network leader, you're the CEO, you're a chief exec, just whoever you are, let us know who you are in the chat box, whether you're a leader of a group, you're a team leader, you're a manager. Hopefully there'll be lots of things for you today. Over to you, Elizabeth. What's happening in the chat box?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Nyawade, and I'm one of your co-host facilitators today. Welcome to yet another session. I've become addicted to these sessions. I look forward to them every Wednesday. Please share with us who you are, where you are joining us from today. We'd also like to know what your job role is. And if you share with us one nice thing that has happened to you this week, that would be lovely. Thank you all.
So it's lovely to see so many of you here today. Hi, Melissa, OD manager and OD practitioner. Hello, Anne-Marie. Hello, Liz. Lots and lots of hello, Jessica. I've seen you on the Tribe platform. Welcome. Hi, Ellie, head of finance. Hi, Joe. Welcome, everybody. So I don't know how we get this time every week. It comes around so quickly. So welcome everybody to this 10th Wellbeing session, all about supporting our leaders. So whether you're in a formal role or an informal role, you're a manager or you see yourself as a leader, then this session is for you. So we have these weekly wellbeing sessions really to offer support, ideas and knowledge for anybody who's got a role in supporting others through this time. We'll be sharing a range of wellbeing support activities, and also we're here to connect with each other, collectively build our community, and we'll be telling you more about the community platform today. So welcome everybody if you're joining us today on Zoom or you've joined us today via YouTube. Welcome.
On our agenda today, you've got me and Zoe. You've already met us. We are your facilitators today, and we will get a national update from Dr. Sonia Wellbeing, and then we will hear about supporting our leaders from Jacqueline, and we'll also hear about compassion from Professor Michael West, and we'll have a session for In Conversation led by Helen Bevan. And we usually end with a call to action and some closing remarks. And on the team today, you've already met me and Zoe. In terms of our contributors, we will have Dr. Sonia Wellbeing, Jacqueline Davies, Professor Michael West, and Dr. Helen Bevan. And behind the scene, our technical hosts, we've got Paul, Zara, and Tej. And please, if you have any difficulties with the technology, just email them on the chat box and they will reach out to you and help out. And our chat box facilitators today are Karen and Louise. On the YouTube, we've got Ian and Lindsay. And on social media, we've got Lee. Thank you. I'm now going to introduce Dr. Sonia Wellbeing to give us an update on what's been happening with the national offer, the national wellbeing offer. Over to you, Sonia.
So, Sonia, just
I'm on mute.
Unmute.
Will that just be the story? Little theme tune. You're on mute. Thank you, Elizabeth. I had said first slide. That's great. Thank you. So I just wanted to remind you today that we have got some great resources already up on the people.nhs.uk website. And these are both materials that we've worked with the Centre for Leadership Development, so Sandhurst as we affectionately call it, that we have worked to develop some evidence-based leadership behaviours. We've also got the Culture and Leadership Programme that's currently housed on the NHS Improvement website. That's got some great resources inside of there. And if I could just do a bit of a shout out for the King's Fund platform as well, that's got some really great podcasts and easy to read guides around leadership. So lots out there, and we're just uploading in the next couple of weeks some professional specific wellbeing work from all of our professional bodies. So we're just working on collating that and turning them into easy read guides. If I could have the next slide. So before I start with the national update, I did just want to say, again, the work that's going on at the moment around our BAME specific programme of work, our CCOL programme of work, feels such important work in our current context. So I have just left an all-staff briefing and been listening to Simon Stevens and Prana is our Chief People Officer, dedicating an entire session to all staff in NHS England and Improvement, talking about Black Lives Matter. Now, I don't think in my years of working with E&I that's ever happened, but it's getting the right level of attention. It's an ongoing conversation, and what we're trying to do as the health and wellbeing team inside of the People Directorate, as a prelude to the People Plan being launched, is pay attention and really give this work our thought, our significance, and work alongside our colleagues to really think about, what does allyship mean to me? And as the question my daughter asked me last night is, but Mum, what are you doing? Well, I'm doing something. I'm doing my best, and I'm really trying to understand what difference this work could make to the well-being of my BAME colleagues. So just wanted to say that as a prelude to the webinar today. So we've broken through the 3,000 mark on the helpline. So we're up at 3,100 calls now, about 1,500 on the text line. Apps still proving popular at 122,000. When I do this, I feel like a bingo caller. And as we end this process, I don't know how I'm going to replace this experience on a Wednesday. And 147,000 visitors to the People website. We've been doing some evaluation work and on the downloaded content. We've had 600 odd people now make comments, and over 4,000 people give us feedback. And in the main, it's been really positive, learning from what people are asking us for and what we can do next. Interestingly, so during June, last 10 days, our most visited site's been, how do I get support now? So you might remember way back when I was telling you what we've learned from previous incidents is that people come and seek help later. It's not in the eye of the storm, it's when things have settled down a bit, as we start to really think about the impact that it's had on us. So are we starting to see that? Children have been a lot on my mind this week, children of co-workers. As Zoe told us earlier, children going back to school. We've heard of examples where the children of key workers are not being treated very nicely. Children can be a bit cruel at times. So what we're trying to do this week is work with a couple of our charity offers around what might we do to educate teachers to really offer some support directly into schools. So more news about that as we unpick that a little bit. The coaching and mentoring offers that have come out, that's live this week again. More information on the website. The CCOL programme of work that we're calling our specific actions around our BAME colleagues has really started to take some shape. And so I'm going to come on, I think next week, and talk to you about our Connect groups in more detail. So this is a bit bigger than a staff network. So it's talking about a national connection and people connecting based on their characteristics as they define them. So being in a space together, offering support to each other. And we know from our Filipino colleagues, they do this sort of work really well, and how much support that gives us. The common room spaces, again, we're looking at specific hosted BAME colleagues providing support in those areas. And one of the things that's coming out quite frequently for us is just how much knowledge do organisations have about what trauma looks like? What does depression look like? What does anxiety look like? And what should we be doing? So we know with trauma that there are things that we can do that make it worse. So that's really important that we as organisations start to learn about, if I can help you in your journey to recovery, if trauma is something you're experiencing, there may be redeployment opportunities, there may be different ways that I work with you that encourage your recovery to be a quicker one rather than make it worse. So we're just trying to put a package together with my fellow psychologist I'm hoping that the MPs take us up on this as well, because I think there's a real misunderstanding of everybody needs to rush in and treat this really quickly rather than watch, wait, support and see what happens. Thanks, Zoe. That's me for today.
Thanks, Sonia. So lots of offers, and it looks like lots of people are taking those up as well. There was a couple of things that I will share with you all about staying in touch. So we're thinking about maybe changing the frequency of our of these wellbeing sessions that we have together. We've got 2 excellent ones coming up. We've got something about OD, and we've also got a session during virtual Pride Week as well. So we're going to be continuing these sessions as well, but we're just thinking about the frequency of them. So there's a couple of ways that you can stay in touch. So we've got the Wellbeing Tribe community, and we're going to ask for the links to go into both YouTube and Zoom. So this is the Tribe platform. So on this platform, this is a great space for you to be sharing your work, and for the national team to be sharing their work and asking for your comments on them as well. So please do visit the site and start interacting on that. The second thing is we've got a mailing list. So we've got about 1,400 people on the mailing list already. So if you'd like to join that, then please do head over to the Horizons website, and the links there as well. And another place that we're sharing all the information is on Twitter as well. So if you're following the hashtag caring4, that's the number 4, caring for NHS people, you'll find everything on there as well. But we will definitely be continuing these webinars, but they'll be at a different frequency as we move to a different pace. We'd also like to find out a little bit more about you and your experiences, not just about joining these webinars, but what are you experiencing at the moment? We've had lots and lots of people tell us about different things, whether it's trauma, whether it's guilt, whether it's trust, whether it's relationships. Lots of people are telling us different things about their current experiences, and we'd love you to join us and share some of your experiences, and we'll put the links to those in both of the boxes, the chat boxes now. It takes 10 minutes, and we've had lots of positive feedback of the people who have used it already and shared their experiences. So please do head and have a look. We'll be taking a pause on that, and then we'll be asking people to recomplete the survey maybe in a couple of months, so that we can see how things have changed over time. Now we've got some exciting things on this. Is, you know, if you'd like to be entered for a draw, then we've got some coaching sessions available as well. So please do have a look at this experience survey that we've got at the moment. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce you to Jacqueline Davies. Jacqueline's our new Director of Leadership Development and Lifelong Learning in NHS England and Improvement. And Jacqueline's going to open our topic today, which is all about supporting leaders. So over to you, Jacqueline.
Thanks, Zoe. Well, hi, everybody. And I think the first thing I want to say is that when I put this slide up in our rehearsal session earlier, everyone said, oh, we all know about putting your oxygen mask on first, but we kind of forgotten to do it. So what I wanted to talk about for the next 5 or 6 minutes really is just a reminder. Just I want you to take the next 5 minutes with me to take stock and ask yourself, what could you do to do this more often? That's really my ask as we go into this session. And I think I should start by telling you that I'm 6 weeks old in NHS terms. And one of the things I've noticed in the 6 weeks that I've been with you is that we are exceptional at mobilising and exceptional about being ambitious about the things we want to change. And I also noticed that yesterday I didn't have time to have breakfast with my daughter, and I didn't have time to have lunch with my daughter because I found myself in back-to-back video conferences for 8 hours yesterday. And that was something I promised myself I wouldn't do, but I found that there I was yesterday, week 6, finding myself ensnared in lots and lots of activity. So I put this slide and these thoughts together with that in mind, and I'm wondering if you recognise some of the things I'm going to talk about. So I'd like to start first with a really personal story about oxygen masks, because actually 4 years ago, I found myself in an acute bed in UCLH with an oxygen mask with double pneumonia. And that double pneumonia has affected my life for the last 4 years. And what we discovered with the double pneumonia wasn't the first time I'd had it. It was probably the fourth time I'd had it, and it was interesting that I hadn't noticed that I'd had it. And at the time, I was effectively the Chief People Officer of the Financial Conduct Authority, and I helped rebuild the regulator after the financial crisis. And what was interesting, it was probably the most, at that point, the high point of my career. So 5 years of exhilarating activity, lots of cool things to do, lots of cool people to do it with. But what was happening over those 5 years is the environment around us was getting more and more demanding. So media were getting closer and closer in terms of their scrutiny. A couple of things went wrong, which resulted in things like public inquiries. And over the course of 5 years, I ended up working with a transition of 3 chief executives, 80% of the top 100, and almost an entire rebuild of the whole workforce. And what I realised when I sat in UCLH looking out the window, I had a very good view from the top floor, was that I had not updated my leadership practice around my own resilience, and that I had neglected it. I had thought that the stuff that I'd learned earlier in my career was still relevant, and I hadn't really paid enough attention to it. And the reason I'm talking about it today is it's taken me 3 years to return to full-time work after that episode. So here I am today talking about it, and also just looking at the research around neuroscience and also positive psychology. What we're now seeing is that resilience is a core leadership practice. So we see that it's a differentiator from the people who make it into the most impactful roles and the people who are influential and able to stay in those impactful roles. And one of the things we're learning is it's not just a question of making sure you take the time to take the dog out and do the walks and do your yoga. It's actually something much more fundamental. It means looking really inside yourself and revisiting your sense of personal purpose and your practice around leadership. And you'll know that I keep talking about the practice of leadership because I think this is an important point to make as well, because I think sometimes we've been brought up to believe that you're either a good or a bad leader. And I think that idea is also changing as well. And the practice of leadership is really thinking about taking each day as it comes, trying some new things, reflecting on that practice, and actually building your skill and your confidence. The same way you would do with, for example, 12 weeks ago, learning about virtual technology. Yeah, we all didn't really know about Zoom 12 weeks ago, or Microsoft Teams, and now we do. What if we applied the same sort of skill development to our sense of resilience as leaders? And so, first place I would recommend you stop and refresh yourself is your own idea of personal purpose. What are you in your roles for? What is it that keeps getting you out of bed in the morning? What is your higher purpose? What's the difference you're making in the world? And really kind of retuning back into that. It might be some time since you've thought about it. I'm really aware that colleagues in the NHS are very aligned to a sense of higher purpose. So I would just invite you to revisit that and ask yourself whether it's still the same. Because actually what the science is now telling us, that sense of personal purpose and the link to the higher purpose of the world is the thing that actually keeps us renewing ourselves. It's the thing that keeps us well underneath the core idea of resilience. So think about resilience from the inside out, and also around this idea, some emerging ideas around red systems and green systems. And those of you with clinical or psychological background will probably be familiar with this work. I think it's worth remembering that a lot of the things we do every day in our practice, the calendar invites, meetings, the reports, the 50-page slide packs, they're all part of essentially a red system. They're the stuff we use to set outcomes and goals, to make progress, to notice whether or not we're on track. Yeah, and those things are all really important, but they're essentially meaning that we're operating in a survival mode. And the green system is the kind of antithesis of the red system. And it's really where we're operating in the moment of play, where we're operating creatively, where we can really access our imaginations and start to build and make new sort of ideas and proposals and solutions. And one of the things I've noticed already in the NHS is we're talking a lot about the green system, but we're actually acting in an everyday way in the red system. And neither of those things are good or bad, but what I want to ask you to think about is how often you spend time in each one, and also understand the limitations, particularly of the red system. And the red system is a system that if you stay too long in it, it's where you can actually find yourself that you'll start to operate almost in a survival and a stress mode. And that practice of habit of operating the red system will start to play with your hormones. It will start to play with your cortisol levels, and it will mean that you start to get stuck. I'll come on to stuckness in a moment, because inevitably we will get stuck. So we need to know how to recognize when we're getting stuck and how to get unstuck. But before I get to that, going back to this idea of practice, I wanted to, again, underline the fact that it takes mastery. So I wouldn't profess to being expert at this yet. This is something of an experiment for me, coming back into a really complex role and making sure that I don't repeat past mistakes. But I do know that actually when I'm looking at my own sense of resilience, I need to look at it through 3 lenses. So obviously the physical lens is really important. This is the lens when we're actually keeping our bodies well. You're the experts in this as healthcare professionals, right? But isn't it interesting how little sometimes we attend to diet and to nutrition and to fresh air and to nature and to taking stock of our physical activity, how we sit. Before I started this call today, I actually went through a conscious effort to think about grounding my feet on the ground underneath the table, not crossing my legs, making sure my shoulders were open, breathing effectively. And it's just being conscious of the physical presence that you're in. Additionally, talking about intellectual mastery of resilience. Actually, when was the last time you put aside time in your diary during the week to watch a podcast, watch a TED talk, read an article that brought you the latest thinking around resilience? And then in terms of the emotional piece around resilience, some of you will know this in terms of the practice of mindfulness, the practice of gratitude journals, the idea of forgiving people, the idea of being generous in terms of your praise. All of those practices and habits all lead to a stronger sense of resilience. But the idea of this is that you start to think about intellectual, physical, and emotional practice and join it. Yeah, and you probably, depending on your own personal style, will have one place you'd like to stay in most. And if you do, if you're like me, I like intellectual mastery. I'm less good at the physical stuff. Be conscious of that and think about how you can vary it. And I really want to close this thought, and I hope you're still with me in terms of thinking about yourself in this. Now, not your teams, not your managers, not your patients, actually thinking about yourself and understanding that you will get stuck. And typically the thing that gets us stuck is being overtired or being frightened. And I just want to pause on the frightened bit and feeling fearful, because I think at the moment, colleagues earlier talked about this big conversation that we've got happening at the moment around Black Lives Matter. I do want us to be sensitive about how we're feeling about that, and also to think about how we're making the space with our teams and thinking about what fear is around in our environment at the moment that could be undermining our resilience and our leadership effectiveness. I also want us to think about time management. It's old-fashioned, it's been around 30 years. I think it's worth digging out the time management books and asking ourselves, you know, why are we giving in to the back-to-back video conference meetings? I've heard some people say in this week, actually, we're not having half-an-hour meetings, now we're having 25-minute meetings, or we're having 45-minute meetings. Folks, I don't think that's sufficient. I don't think that's going to get us into a space where we can be more in the green system and more in the resilience system. I think we need to be bolder. I think a lot of the practice will say to you that actually you need to carve out good half days of time to do this stuff well. And I'm always reminded, so outside of my work with the NHS, there's a really great video, if you have a look on YouTube and you Google the Warren Buffett, Bill Gates discussion on time. And if you know Warren Buffett, one of the world's biggest investors, Bill Gates, goes without saying, Microsoft founder, they're guys who could have anything or everything they wanted in terms of their lifestyle, their work. And actually they talk about the concept of time. Yeah, and it's really, I want to kind of end where I started, which is our time really is short. I'm very conscious at the moment. I've just suffered a very close family bereavement about how short our time is. And so time management isn't just about what you put in your calendar, it's about what you choose to prioritize and how that links to your higher purpose. And essentially, what's the legacy you're going to leave after you've gone? And those are the things that underpin good leadership practice and good leadership practice of resilience. So please stay conscious. So back to you.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. That's really, really informative session there. I think what has stuck with me is, what is your higher purpose? And I'm going to take away that and reflect on it. We're now going to hear from Professor Michael West on compassionate leadership. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And a big thanks to the Horizons team for inviting me to be part of this session today. And warm greetings to you all who are participating, lots of friends out there. It's a delight to join you all this afternoon. I'm going to talk about compassion. Compassionate healthcare, inclusive healthcare, the core values of the health service. And compassion is the most powerful intervention there is in healthcare. So can we have the first slide? This is just a small selection of the main research findings from a review by Tresiak and Mazzarelli in the United States of the research on compassion, which shows very clearly that compassion is the most important intervention we know of in healthcare. It also is beneficial for leaders in healthcare. It's beneficial for clinicians. When we show compassion to others, when we behave compassionately, it has an impact on our stress levels, our well-being, our spending time in the green zone, as Jacqueline talked about in her very wise and inspiring thoughts. And so the challenge is for us to create environments within which compassion is the dominant value in our health and care organizations. And that means that our leaders must embody compassion in their leadership. Thanks, Zoe, for the next slide. And very simply, what that means is these 4 behaviors: leaders taking the time to be present with those they lead, to listen to them with fascination, to seek to understand challenges that those they lead face, to empathize, to care for them, and to help them. And it's no coincidence that those 4 behaviors are the behaviors that leadership research has shown over the last 60 years are the most important elements for effective leadership. It's no coincidence, because compassion is core to what it is to connect with others, to feel a sense of belonging. And compassionate leadership is also good for us as leaders, being present, seeking to understand the other, being emotionally intelligent, and then helping, which we know is so powerful in terms of human well-being. But it's also important, I think, to understand that compassion isn't about simply pleasing other people or being a leader who seeks everyone's approval. It's not simply about soft cushions and scented candles. Leadership, compassionate leadership, takes courage and perseverance. Next slide, please, Zoe. Compassionate leadership is about ensuring effectiveness, and that means helping those we lead to be clear about the direction of our work, our purpose. It means helping everyone to align their efforts around that core purpose rather than dissipating them in different directions. And it means helping to build a climate of trust and commitment and motivation amongst people. It means being an inclusive leader, a leader who ensures that everyone feels included. It's not having an average positive rating from those we lead, it's having a rating from everybody that reflects that they feel included. The NHS was founded on the principle of an inclusive and compassionate service. And it's about ensuring that we are encouraging the leadership of everybody by creating collective leadership. And it's about compassionately leading across boundaries, always asking the question of other teams, of other departments, of other organizations, of other sectors, how can we help you? So compassionate leadership is tough. And I want to say a little bit now about how we practically also put that into practice in the context of the difficult times we're in. And I want to start by emphasizing that last January, before the pandemic struck, we were in about the darkest place in the history of our health and care system, with stress levels among staff at the highest they'd ever been, the highest vacancy rates, the highest intentions to quit, and seeing the key indicators of healthcare provision plummeting. And then along came the pandemic. So it's vital that our leadership is now focused not just on here in the crisis, but recognizing the place we were at, and that we need to change leadership and cultures now and permanently. So I think compassionate leadership is about addressing 7 questions about how we can lead compassionately. And I'm going to pick out the top 5. The first is how we can ensure that we give more autonomy or enable more autonomy and control amongst those we lead. So to ensure everyone we lead has a sense of voice and influence, has a sense of voice and control, rather than feeling done to, dictated to, directed. It's how can we change the basic work conditions of people, which are frankly, in many cases, inhuman, ensuring that people have access to water, to nutritious food when they're on a 12-hour shift at night, ensuring that they have lockers they can put their things in, ensuring that they have places and spaces to take breaks. Jacqueline talked about these green times. Well, being still and taking a break is a really important green time. And people need spaces and places where they can do that. And the introduction of wobble rooms has been really helpful, but we must maintain those spaces and places for those we lead, and ensuring also that we're taking account of the fatigue that people are experiencing. 3 12-hour night shifts, which may stretch into 13 or 14 hours, and then driving home is simply exhausting. We have to be compassionate leaders and understand how we can help people avoid and better manage fatigue and give people more control over rotas, so that rotas are not just about productivity and efficiency of resources, but about how we adapt rotas to help people to balance their work lives and their family lives and their social lives effectively, and how we think about work schedules so that we are not just exhausting our staff. And the third question is about fairness and justice, of ensuring that the tragedy, the obscenity that is racism and discrimination is eradicated for our society. And the NHS is a hugely important institution in our society for spreading compassion and inclusion. I think there's probably no more important institution. 1.4 million people working in the NHS in England, 1 in 20 of the workforce. Compassionate leadership is about changing our cultures so that they are inclusive, so that they are fair, so that they're just. And that's both about changing governance, policies, processes, structures, but also about how we behave individually, day in, day out, and how we develop allyship and how we learn to be more inclusive, compassionate leaders day by day. And it's about creating climates of psychological safety where people feel safe and supported to learn, to make mistakes and learn from them, rather than climates of blame and fear. And the fourth question is how we build more effective team working. What we've seen during the pandemic is that for some people, they've been able to be members of stable teams where they've built trusting relationships rather than feeling like strangers from a strange land when they come into yet another ward or another team. And team working is so fundamental to our sense of belonging in health and care organizations. And part of the how of compassionate leadership is how can we build and enable more effective teamwork for all of our staff so that they have membership of home teams as well as working from time to time in various other teams. And the fifth question, and I think is critical, is how can we as compassionate leaders address the question of chronic excessive workload. It's the number one predictor of staff stress, the number one predictor of staff intention to quit, the number one cause of patient dissatisfaction, the number one cause of errors that harm patients and staff. How can we as leaders address the question of chronic excessive workload rather than not seeing it? It's just a pattern on the wallpaper we no longer see. How can we eliminate unnecessary activities? How can we develop roles so that people's time and competence is used more effectively? How can we make better use of technology and learn from what's happened during the pandemic to use technology to reduce workload on this chronic excessive workload on staff? How can we build more effective multidisciplinary team working that provides higher quality care so the care is more effective? How can we ensure that we have the right numbers of staff? And how can we eliminate activities that we can't really meaningfully provide in the context of high levels of staff vacancies and high demands? And how can we continue to work with the community? The public has shown such compassion, such gratitude, and such treasuring of our health and care system. How can we continue to build on that goodwill and involve the communities in the genuine co-ownership and co-design of our health services? And how can we more genuinely involve patients and families in the co-ownership and co-design of treatment? I think to be a really effective, compassionate and inclusive leader, we have to, I think, learn from what Jacqueline said and remember that first and foremost, this is about self-compassion as leaders, that we must pay attention to ourselves. We must be self-aware, listen to ourselves with fascination. We must really seek to understand the challenges we face in our work lives and in our lives generally, and not just be victims of patterns of work that drive us into the ground and stop us from being aware or conscious. And we have to empathize with ourselves. And that means, and this may seem curious, we have to care for ourselves, to value ourselves as unique beings in this existence. And then we have to take intelligent, thoughtful, careful action to help ourselves in order that we can be the best leaders we can be and stay close to the core values that give our lives and our health service meaning, like compassion and humanity. So this begins with self-compassion. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So much what you said and what Jacqueline said really resonates with me. And while I've been looking at the chat box as well, you know, that what you said, Michael, about the chronic excessive workload, you know, that seemed to be coming through quite a lot as well. So we're now going to move into our conversation with, so we're going to have now a conversation with Jacqueline, Michael, Elizabeth and Helen. And what I'm going to invite everybody to do is, you know, if you've got some questions, some comments, some thoughts, then please do add them to the chat box in both Zoom and YouTube, and we'll come straight over to you. So I'm going to hand over to Helen. Over to you.
Thank you, Zoe, and hi to everyone. I've just been flicking across both systems, Zoom and YouTube, and we've had nearly 300 people contributing today, which 10 weeks in, I think is pretty amazing. And the other thing, just hearing, Jacqueline and Michael, just amazing content in the chat box, and what I really love about that is that we're just how we're all we're co-coaching each other through a chat box. Did we ever think we could do that virtually? And lots of compassionate leadership we're seeing there. So what we want to do now is have some reflection with our panel. So just to tell you, just to warn our panel what's going to happen first. Elizabeth, I'm going to call on Elizabeth in a moment, because Elizabeth, what I want you to do is, having heard Jacqueline and Michael, and in the context of your own life and work as the Deputy Chief People Officer at St George's, I'd like you to give a personal reflection, okay, Elizabeth, to start with, on well-being for leaders, and after that, I'm just giving notice to Jacqueline and Michael. What I'd like you to do after we've heard from Elizabeth is to pick something that the others said. So Michael, I want you to pick something that Jacqueline said, and Jacqueline, I want you to pick something that Michael said that really spoke to you, and to reflect on that in the context of the well-being of our leaders. So let's start with Elizabeth, okay? Elizabeth, let's hear some reflection from you.
Right. It's been an interesting time for me, and a really challenging one as well, because I joined St George's at the height of COVID on the 2nd of March. So I've only been a new organization, you've got the pandemic on, and it was in that mix that I started working here as a very senior leader. And it's also suddenly changed from the point of view that I joined as Deputy Chief People Officer, and I'm now Acting Chief People Officer. So a sudden change that has also come in fairly rapidly. So my experience has been one whereby it's been very difficult to put into practice the self-care that I know about, the self-care that our contributors today have shared. From the point of view that you have this sense, I've been having this sense of overwhelming responsibility. You've got to be there day in, day out, to be there for the team, to be there for for my fellow executive colleagues, to be there in this period whereby you are constantly trying to understand and translate different directives coming from the government, coming from NHSI, NHSE. It is busy from that point of view, and you just feel you have this responsibility to be there, share it, translate it for the rest of the organization. So that has been busy. You almost feel like you have no permission really to take time off. You are constantly on duty to be there for the rest. So whereas you know about self-care, you know what you should be doing, putting it into practice for me has just not worked yet. So I hope that sort of summarizes my experience to date. So I'm out there looking out for my colleagues. I am saying it to the rest of my colleagues. And in terms of putting it into practice, it has been very challenging to do so.
I can absolutely hear that, Elizabeth. And one thing I was going to ask you, I know that you've been using some of the excellent national resources that we've got. And again, just to do a quick plug on those, go on to people.nhs.uk to see the fantastic evidence-based support systems that are available for leaders as part of our national offer. Elizabeth, what have you been doing?
What I suddenly took up the offer of getting a mentor from the Army. And I thought that if I go for this opportunity, I might just inject some discipline into my life. I always associate the army with some level of discipline, rigor, routine. So I've tapped into that offer. It was extremely easy to sign up for it. And I got a response from them immediately in a few hours. So I've already been matched to a mentor, and we have our first session on Friday this week. So I'm really, really looking forward to that offer. And thank you very much to the People team. And I'm hoping that it is something that will help me inject some level of discipline and routine of self-care into my current life.
Yeah, thank you so much, Elizabeth, and we'll come back to you in a moment. So, Jacqueline, what did you hear from Michael that spoke to you and that you'd like to share with us, all 300 of us now?
So I was really struck by Michael's application of compassionate leadership, to be compassionate to yourself. This idea that actually you need to treat yourself, you need to be good to yourself, you need to look after yourself first. And this idea of being compassionate to yourself, I think, is the thing that resonated with me. And I'm just really empathising with what Elizabeth has just said. I really do understand that world. And I would also just, going back to Michael's point about compassionate leadership, what's stopping you being compassionate to yourself? Why don't you deserve to put yourself first? I think that's a real interesting question to explore. And particularly in the world of human resource leadership, I know there's sometimes a cultural sense that actually we're not, you know, kind of, I'm going to speak it out loud, we're not maybe good enough, or it's not our place to put ourselves first because we're a service function. And so in being a service function, we might have adopted a servile mindset. So I just want to go back to Michael's thought about compassionate leadership and ask us to think about, well, what's stopping us being good to ourselves? And is it because we're really frightened about doing that? And what's holding us back?
Michael, what did you hear from Jacqueline?
So, Jacqueline, you talked about preciousness of time and shortness of time and being conscious. And I was reflecting as you were saying that we all share the gift of this existence, this great mystery, and we can get so caught up in being driven by external events and Zoom meetings and so on that we forget to be. We forget to be conscious, we forget to be present. We forget to be present when we're with the people we work with. We forget to be present when we're with patients. We forget to be present when we're with our loved ones. And that remembering to be present, remembering to be conscious, remembering to be here and now, remembering to look out of the window and see the trees in the midst of all of this is a way of reminding ourselves of being, when we're present with people that we work with or we're caring for or with our loved ones, that's not only a gift to them, but it's a gift to ourselves. It's good for our well-being. It's a way of being compassionate. And in fact, I think that when we practice that, because none of us are perfect at it, when we practice that, coming back to stillness, coming back to being present, coming back to nature, coming back to being present with others, then in fact, I think that taking care of ourselves, being self-compassionate, actually happens more naturally. So whether we use mindfulness practices or meditation practices or just simply learning to be conscious of this moment in terms of time and consciousness that you talked about, I think is a powerful way of practicing throughout our working lives and indeed our lives generally, of learning to be more effective and values driven and to find a sense of purpose in life that you described.
Right. And you know, Michael, just listening to you makes me slow down. You know, I think it's fast. And Jacqueline, do you want to
yeah, just one thing to underline. I think hopefully we've communicated this, which is this, you know, even at our great age, we're still learning. And to keep learning, sometimes you need to find great teachers. And one of my great teachers actually has joined us today, Rani Sharma, or otherwise known as Rani Baines. And Rani is one of the most novel thinkers in this, and she's also just joined Twitter. So I'd invite colleagues here to start following her on Twitter and tapping with her thinking.
And if you can pop Jacqueline her Twitter handle in the chat box, I think we'll get she'll get a few more followers. So we haven't got a lot of time left, but what I'm going to suggest we do is we take we go to our 3 chat box monitors and we take a question each from them, and I'm going to give you a choice of which question you want to answer. So Elizabeth, you're going to get first choice, okay, and then Jacqueline, then Michael. So let's get our 3 questions. So Karen, can you pick a question from the chat box that we'd like to ask?
Yeah, just to say, there's been so many inspiring comments. People have valued it so much, the conversations and all of the speakers. One of the questions that I think kept coming through was, and with people talking about the need for self-compassion and how tough that is. And so Sally had a really good, how can we keep enough energy in the tank to be compassionate leaders to care for others? And so my question would be, that followed on, was, what is it when it gets tough? What is it that Jacqueline, Michael and Elizabeth would do that keeps them going, that keeps their resilience there?
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks, Karen. And Louise, would you like to pick a question?
Yes, thanks, Helen, and thanks, everybody. Yeah, lots of fantastic conversations in the chat box, so thank you, everyone, for those contributions. There was a question that came through from Terry asking, how do we achieve a greater attention to the importance of compassion in an environment dominated by division and populism in the mass media?
Okay. Great, thank you. And finally, let's hear from our colleagues on YouTube. So Ian, have you got a question?
I have, Helen. It's been an absolute joy in YouTube this afternoon. In fact, I've got so many questions, it's been difficult to pick one out. But I think the one that I'm going to pick actually comes from Mike. And Mike says, he's asking the question is, many senior leaders in the current pandemic have actually shown a real human side to themselves and a real compassionate leadership. How do we make sure that when we return to this new normal, whatever that is, that we don't return to the old practices and that compassion and that human side of NHS management is not lost?
Yeah, great. Thanks, and thanks to everybody who asked questions. So actually, I think there's quite a lot of common theme between those questions. So I think the core themes: how do we keep enough energy in the tank to keep going? The second one: how do we achieve a sense of self-compassion when the things that are going around us in the mass media and so on? And many of our senior leaders have shown a more compassionate leadership approach, and how do we keep to that? So Elizabeth, would you like to answer on one of those themes?
Yes, the one thing that has kept me going that I absolutely love is going for a run. And I've preserved Sundays for that. I make sure that come rain or shine, I go out for a really nice long run on a Sunday. I find that it rejuvenates me and it keeps me focused, and I absolutely look forward to my runs on a Sunday. That has kept me going throughout this time.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And the other thing we know that you love is coming and being our leader for the last 10 weeks, because you've been magnificent. So yeah, really appreciate
thank you.
These webinars every week. And so Jacqueline, what would you, can you hear your response?
Yes, I can. Can I say 2 things? I make a mean Negroni. And and this is important, actually. I think, remembering is back to what Michael said, remembering what's pleasurable. And actually, I like the idea of a cocktail hour, marking, delineating the difference between work and life. I think that's really important. And I think we might have lost sight of that in the current lockdown arrangements. But also, I got myself a dog. I wasn't getting out enough. I'm not a runner. I haven't completed Couch to 5K yet. but I got myself a dog, and I have to walk every day now, come rain or shine.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jacqueline. And Michael, you get the very last word in our conversation.
And do you want me to address any of these three questions?
Yeah, just to pick one of the themes that came out from those three questions to respond to.
So I think that I feel the questions about division and populism and how we retain compassionate leadership going forward. I think that we make choices individually, and there's also, I think, organizational level, structural level things we need to change. I think individually we can make choices about how much time we spend exposing ourselves to populism and to media and to things that corrode our sense of purpose and sense of meaning, and making sure we've got a balance of spending good time with our loved ones. For me, it's practice of meditation, not as some grim duty, but like some warm bath every day. I've obviously been missing out on the Negroni for many years, but I think also it's about a determination from us as leaders at all levels of our health and care systems. It's not just about hoping things will be better, but all of us have to be determined, I think, that we change our leadership, that we take collective responsibility for changing the leadership and the cultures of all our health and care organizations. So we take the best from this awful period and make sure that is our future. And there are so many hopeful signs, I think, that can give us the motivation to do that. And I think it's vital that we do that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I know what's going to happen now because we're running out of time, and Zoe will start looking at me in a certain way virtually. So if we could have the next slide. What I want to do really finally with our panel is in one breath, I want you to answer this question. While you're doing that, I'd like everybody else to try and answer it in the chat box as well. So let's all have a go. You know, so Mike's question from YouTube was, you know, how our senior leaders have been more compassionate. How do we keep that? So when it comes to the well-being of our people, what one positive change has happened that you'd like to keep for the future? Okay, so so what's been happening the last the last 3 months that we definitely need to keep, and our panelists have to answer this in one breath. So we'll do it the other way around. So Michael,
we have to care for our staff.
Lovely. And Jacqueline,
we have to listen more and more frequently.
Great. And Elizabeth,
be authentic and remain authentic.
Yeah, lovely, great advice. So everybody else, I hope we can see your answers in the chat box as well. And I apologise, Zoe, but back over to you.
No need to apologise, Helen, whatsoever. I was engrossed in the conversation as well, and all the comments coming in as well in the chat room, so please keep those coming. A couple of final things that we do at the end of our webinars is I'd love us to complete this poll. So if you're on Zoom, I'll ask my colleague Paul to add the poll to the screen, and if you're in YouTube, then please do add the number to the chat box. So what extent has today's session been useful in your own role in supporting staff health and well-being during and after COVID-19? So we just got getting those come in. So please do keep adding to the poll or to the chat box if you're in YouTube. So we will just close that in just a few moments, and we can see those results coming in. So we can find that the majority of people are finding it very useful. So please do keep adding to the chat box what you want to keep, and maybe you might even want to say what you're going to do from today's session. I'm now going to move on, and if Paul, if you wouldn't mind closing the poll for us, that would be fantastic, with the majority saying that it's really quite helpful. So please do add to the chat box as well. And one final thing is our next session. So our 11th session will all be about how can OD support the well-being of our staff. So this came out of, I think it was last week or the week before, we said, what would you like a topic to be? And everybody said organisational development, we want a topic just on OD. So your wishes, we've got it, and we're very much looking forward to that session. We're going to do it jointly with Do OD. So we've got Karen Demain and we've got Paul Taylor-Pitt joining us as well for that session. And we've got another session after that, which is all connected with Virtual Pride Week as well. So from myself, Elizabeth, the panel, thank you for joining us today, and we very much look forward to seeing you on Tribe, on Twitter, and with us next week. So take care of yourselves, and look forward to seeing you then.
Okay.
See you soon. Nice to see you, Samantha, Louise, Rhiannon, Sonia. Hi, Paul. Lovely to see you. Hi, Lindsay, Chris, Helen Thomas, Sarah. Lovely to see you all. Look forward to hearing what you've done following the session today. Hi, Debbie Taylor. I can see you. Hi. Liz, wonderful to see you. Hope the dogs are well. Look forward to seeing you on Twitter with some more photos. Maggie P, Sam, lovely to see you all. So I'm going to ask my colleague Paul to set us up a breakout group, and for the speakers and hosts and tech hosts and everybody to move over to. So thank you everybody for joining today. Terry, Nick, Seema, hi Seema, Charlotte, Michelle, lovely to see you.